back in the studio, and I'm so pleased to welcome Shirley Shiflett this morning. And she has a lot of good information for us, and because there are many people probably watching who may not know Shirley Shiflett, but she's a resident. And how long have you lived here, Shirley?
It'll be 15 years, November 3rd.
And she's been very much involved in the community in the dancing things and in doing craft windows, right?
Yeah, in the showgirls and in pickleball.
So I'm sure, you know, most of you probably have seen her or whatever. But anyhow, she has been in a very interesting study with the National Institute of Health and for an aging research project. And I want you to tell us all about it, Shirley.
Well, one day I was reading the Beacon and I saw this advertisement for the study on aging with NIH, and I thought, that looks interesting. So in a couple days I called them, and they said, well, they talked to me a while on the phone, and they said, well, we'd like for you to come in for an interview. And they said, we will pick you up. And I thought, wow, that's nice. And so they did. They picked me up, and they had identified the driver and the kind of car he was going to have and everything, and drove me to Baltimore and to the MedStar Hospital there. And it was a very nice facility, at which time they did some cognitive tests, and they did some blood work. And they explained to me that a lot of blood work was involved in the study. And I said, oh, I don't like to give blood. I don't know that I could do that. And they said, well, let us explain to you how we do it. And they said, you're going to sit in a chair, and they're going to put a port in your arm. And then during the study, every 20 minutes for 2 hours, they will come and draw blood, because a lot of our study involves blood work. And so you better be sure that you can do this before you sign up for the study. So they did it not for 2 hours, but they did it with the port and everything. And I thought, well, you know, I can do this, because it wasn't like they were jabbing me every 20 minutes. And the girl was so good with a needle, I really didn't even feel when I went in. So, but still, at the end of the morning, they talked to me and they said, now, are you comfortable with the blood work? Because that, while some things are not required in the study, the blood work definitely is. And I said, no, I really thought I could do it. But now, part of the study involves a closed MRI, and I am claustrophobic.
Well,
not to get in
some people have trouble with
to get in an elevator doesn't bother me, but if I were locked in an elevator for a couple of days, I'd probably not be happy.
Well, we all would have that problem.
But anyway, I said I did not think I could do the closed MRI. I said, do you have an open MRI? And they said, no, we only use the closed. And I said, well, could you give me a Valium or a tranquilizer or something? And they said, no, we don't do that. In fact, no medication or anything is involved in this study. All they're doing is observing the aging process. And they do a variety of tests to do that. But they said the MRI was not required. And they said, would you be willing to try it? And I said, of course. So then they called me. They said, we'll call you in a couple weeks and let you know if you've been accepted. And so at the end of a couple weeks, they called and said, yes, you've been accepted, and when would you like to come? So they pick you up, and usually in the late afternoon, and you have dinner. And let's see, I can look at my schedule. You might think that you go to there for 3 days and that you relax. Not so. All right, when you got there at 4:30, you filled out the consent work. They checked your vital signs, and then you had dinner. At 6 a.m. the next morning, they put on an EKG halter, and then you did the blood work. Then you had breakfast. Then they did 8:15 history and a physical, an echocardiogram, then lunch, then a taste bud photo, and a pulse wave velocity. Do not eat, drink, caffeine 30 minutes before the start of that. Then a very comprehensive visual field, a DEXA body measurement, at 2:45 active heart, then a 400-meter walk, then at 4:15 a vision test, then a computer AQA, I don't remember what that was, then dinner, then you had the halter off, or at 6:30 the next morning you had the halter off, breakfast, and a BVR, I'd have to look up what that was, and then an EMG sensitivity and a strength test, and then a CT scan and dinner, and then an interview. Then the next morning at 6:30, you had a resting. They wanted you resting, and they put a thing on and they measured your breathing. Then an MRI, then a treadmill, and I believe you wore a mask for this treadmill. Then a hearing exam, then a gait exam, and a lot of different things. One that I found interesting was the cognitive one. Mm-hmm. And they would start off having you repeat words that they said, 2 words, 3 words, 4 words, and they kept getting bigger and bigger. And then after a while they said, okay, now repeat those words to me in alphabetical order. And that was a little more challenging.
Yeah, right.
That was a little more challenging. But it was interesting, the things that they had you do. And one of them, I'm big on practicing my balance all the time. And you started off standing with your eyes open, and then standing with your eyes closed. And I believe we had one leg up at this time. And then you're standing on a piece of foam with your eyes closed and one leg up. And I did it, and I thought, wow, that's good. And so I was feeling so good about it. And he said, yes, he said, but your body was swaying more this year than what it was last year, because this will be my 3rd time to go in November of this year. So I had a device around my waist, and that's what they were measuring. So sometimes when you're thinking, wow, I'm really doing good on this, you're not realizing what they're really looking for, you know.
Yeah.
But it's like getting a very complete physical.
Over-complete, it sounds like.
Yes, yes, it is. And I did try the MRI, and I lasted about 10 seconds. And then we all agreed that that was not for me.
Oh.
So,
well, I know
don't
many
do that
people
one.
have problems with a closed MRI in terms of the being enclosed.
well, and I think it's your arms have to be down. And it was like for a long period of time. And I could just envision my nose itching and not being able to scratch. And I just thought, I cannot do that. I cannot, no. And I thought it was not required, you know. And I thought, it's not required. I'm not going to stress myself with that.
Is there an age requirement to begin this testing? Or, I mean, what's
they have so many different studies. I don't believe there is, because there was another couple, and I found this very interesting. The first time that I went, I got there about 4, and there were 5 other people who had been there many times over the years. In fact, one couple had moved to Florida. But because they had been in the study for 29 years, they flew them up from Florida.
29 years?
Yes,
Wow.
because their data was so important to them. And one of the gentlemen who was in that group the next day when I was doing my first time with the 2 hours of them drawing blood, and he's sitting next to me, and I said, your job is to provide scintillating conversation for 2 hours so I don't think about all the blood they're taking out of my body. And he did. He told me about his wife and his children and his life, you know, and the 2 hours went by really fast. And last year when I went, I didn't really have anybody to talk to, but I was totally relaxed. In fact, I think I slept part of the time, you know.
How many years have you been doing this?
This will be my 3rd one.
That's right,
I
you
started in
mentioned that,
14, 15. This will be the 3rd one. And I would anticipate doing it, you know.
Yeah,
and
I
they
mean,
will,
how long you can continue as long as...
Oh, until you die. You're in it forever. You know?
And then when do they, or how do they use the research, or, you know, do you know anything about that?
They just are trying to find the behaviors of people. One of the things you fill out is a food survey of the kind of food that you eat, and also on the amount of exercise you get. And they're trying to, I guess, equate the habits of healthy people, trying to find out what makes people live, into their 90s and still be active. And also maybe to determine at what age people start to lose it or what causes them to lose it. Now, you have to meet certain criteria to join this study. You have to be healthy, and they seem to accept some limitations, but not others. They're kind of strict on what they accept. But once you're in the study, like if I were to get cancer or to get diabetes, they would continue to have me in the study, and they would just monitor
that's good.
what it is.
Yeah.
And they do they sit down and talk to you about your blood results and about all the lab work that they do. And at the end of the time, they send 2 copies to you, one for you and one for your doctor. And we were talking about what they stamped on this. They stamped diagnostic. I think it was, didn't we say it was diagnostic? Yes. Oh, not diagnostic, research purposes only.
Right.
So, like what they told me.
Your doctor can use the information, but they aren't diagnosing anything.
That's right. They're not. The closest they came to diagnosing anything for me was they said, "You are flirting with diabetes." And so, and I said, "Well, what do you suggest for that?" And they said, "More exercise and less sugar." Which of course
of course.
I know in my mind.
We all kind of know that.
And sometimes I remember it, and sometimes I say, well, surely they didn't mean that peanut butter yogurt that I'm going to have tonight.
Well, I did actually have the first interview for this research study. I can't remember how many years ago, when someone came here to the community, representing the study group, and somebody said, I guess, I was doing Viva at the time, and I think Lisa suggested that I should try. So I had the phone number, and I called and did the telephone conversation that you have as the initial thing. And they went through all sorts of questions, and then the last question they asked me was, have you ever had skin cancer, specifically squamous, or some people say squamous, in the last, I can't remember, 10 years or something like that? And if you did, how long ago was your most recent experience with that? Well, I didn't remember exactly, but I knew it was not long enough. But when I didn't know what they were going to say, but they said, I'm sorry, we can't accept you because if you've had that recently, then they don't include you in the test, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, Ernie Salk was in that study for years.
Yeah.
And when I first went and they found out I was from Green Spring, they said, do you know Ernie? I said, oh, I love Ernie. And they said, everybody loves Ernie. And they felt so badly when Ernie passed away.
Is there anyone else that you know of in the community now doing?
Not that I know of, but I think there are people taking it because they seem very familiar with Green Spring.
Well, I thought it would be such an interesting thing to do, and it sounds as if it is.
Yeah, and the people were so nice, and they really want you to be happy. And when you go, they give you a chit or coupon to go down to the restaurant. And I think one night I had sushi, and another time I had stir fry, but they give you a chit for breakfast, and for another one for lunch, and another one for dinner. And yeah,
it's covered.
Yeah, it's all covered. And do you have a room? Some people share a room, and I think I shared a room one year, and then one year I had a private room. I think if you really wanted a private room, you could request it, but it never mattered to me.
Well, this is, it's really interesting to hear about what the study actually is if you're engaged in it, as you have been for several years now. And, will you continue till?
Oh, I would intend to continue, and in fact, I think that they will come to your home, or in our case, our apartment, and give you some of the tests if you were able to the point that you could not come.
Oh.
But the fact that they would fly people up from Florida,
Right, yeah.
sure, especially after 29 years.
Well,
so.
that's probably because these people were in it that long.
Yeah, so they must have
really...
been in their 50s when they started, because they were about in their 80s then.
Oh.
So
it is, I wondered what age they would cut off for beginning. Maybe not any, maybe no cutoff.
well, I mean, I was 80, so I don't know. They might not, like if you wanted to join when you're 98, they might think, well, buddy,
you've aged in place and you nothing to learn.
We don't know. We invest all this, how much more time you have, but then you don't know. They might have a study that they'd find that really useful.
Yeah. Well, and then every now and then one reads articles about, the aging process in publications, and it's always interesting to find out what people are learning about the aging. And I think now, there are expressions like, well, if you're 70, that's the new 60 or something like that, because people are living longer and in better health generally.
Yes.
So it's, our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, who knows?
Well, especially with all the research they're doing now and all the wonderful things that they're doing with stem cells and the progress they're making in fighting diseases. I mean, I remember my parents talking about how many people died in the flu epidemic in the early 1900s. A lot of people died from that. And remember polio? How we used to have I remember as a kid riding the streetcar, and you'd almost always see somebody who was crippled. Somebody who was really handicapped, either from World War I or from polio.
I remember that time, the polio thing specifically, because our oldest daughter was a little person at that time, and hearing that you should get the shot or whatever it was, and I don't know if it was oral at that point or a shot, and not take your children to public places.
Oh no, we didn't go swimming.
No, I remember that too. So, they've lots of information. They learned lots of things about us.
Well, and we
ages.
take for granted, I think, the fact that you don't get I mean, did you get mumps when you were a kid? I did.
Yeah, I did too.
I had
measles and mumps and all that.
And chicken pox. Yeah.
So you build up a natural immunity to things too, and that's an important thing to remember for little children when people have new babies and they want to protect them and everything sterilized. That's okay to a degree, but actually they say that children build up natural immunity to lots of things that help them through their life if they are not all in a bubble,
Yeah, I think so too.
So,
but one thing that I had a friend who got shingles, a very severe case of shingles, and this was maybe 20 years ago, and she said, run, don't walk, and get your shingle shot.
Yeah.
And maybe it's 18 years, but anyway, it was
it's
a long time ago, but I did.
Very painful thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. My husband experienced that, and I know how dreadful it was. So, this National Institute of Health does a lot of other things, I'm sure, besides just study aging. Do you know anything about that?
Well, not really. This is the only experience I've had with them, but I think they do a lot of research.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
And they do a lot of, which of course what this is, but I think they're a very reputable organization, and I felt very comfortable going there. I know the whole 5th floor at this hospital is all devoted to this study. So you're not mixing with people who are ill or anything, it's not you don't think of it as being a hospital.
Right.
and you just wear very comfortable clothes. You know, they tell you bring sweatpants. Some of the things they want you to wear shorts in, which I have given up wearing long time ago. You have to wear because some of the stuff they want to put on,
on
you know,
your
to
legs.
measure your gait. And one of the things they have you do is you're walking up and walking back and walking up and walking back in your normal gait, and then they want you to do it as fast as you can do it. And but you've got a little mask on that is measuring, you know, your breathing
and your oxygen levels.
And at first I thought that would bother me with my claustrophobia, but it didn't. It didn't,
well, good.
You know, so that was good.
So you found out things about yourself that you had thought you couldn't deal with, right?
That's true. And I really found out I'm horrible at puzzles. And I don't know if you remember from school, but they would show you a figure on the left that maybe would be a circle with a little bit cut out of it. And then over on the right would be all these other ones. And which one was that one?
How do you match them up?
I'm on the third row. Maybe there's 20 of them, and the time's up. I mean, that's how inept at that. And I thought, wow, I haven't changed a bit in all these years. I still can't do those things.
Well, I know it was interesting. I did participate in the VIVA program from the beginning till it ended in this past year or two, and found that interesting because once a year you would it was just a matter of a couple hours that you were being tested, but it was the same type of thing but not with MRI, but there was something that measured your body mass index and things like that, and then the records were kept and passed on to your doctor and gave you some information about what's happening to you as you age. For instance, are you shrinking in height, which most people are, and your weight, has it changed, and how quickly can you get up from a chair, and that kind of thing, and also the balance things on the sponge and all that. So it's not nearly what you had experienced, but it was also very interesting.
Well, it sounds like they're doing things in the right direction at VIVA.
But
now, did they stop the VIVA program?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it was because it wasn't economically worthwhile doing, because not enough people were hooking into it. I have no idea why, but Lisa, the woman who was doing it on the staff, now works in the fitness center.
Yeah, well, I noticed when she came over there. Of course, I was happy to see her back there.
Yeah. So
didn't she start off in the gym years ago?
She did, yeah, and then
Such a nice lady.
She took on the VIVA program, and so anyhow, I'm glad I did it for about 7 years.
Well, you know, I think working on our balance, I'm so glad they have the balance classes here.
Oh, yeah, that's
But I think
good.
the balance is so very important.
Oh, it is. And we're getting down to the last minute, Shirley.
It's gone so fast, Frances.
Do you have something you would like to leave us with regarding this?
Anybody who's interested should call the number. Diane had the packet and the information, so, or if people wanted to call me, I would give them the number. But it's an adventure, and like you said, you learn a lot about yourself, and it's a wonderful physical.
Yeah,
you figure,
it
gee, if something's wrong, they're going to find it.
Maybe I should try again. I might be too old at this point. So. But anyhow, it's been a pleasure having this conversation, and you know, I hope people learned something, and I hope they respond, and I'm sure you'll be asked questions in the hallways from people who might have seen you on the program today. So,
well, and if anybody out there in the audience is in this program, give me a call and let me know, because it'd be fun to know who else is going.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Shirley. And now I think we have some announcements, as we always do every Village in Motion program.